The hovel always smelled of piss and burnt potatoes. Damp mold crept up the walls like veins, and the single window was crusted over with years of smoke and grease. The floor was dirt, uneven and cold. If you were barefoot in winter, the chill bit deep and didn't let go. The ceiling leaked, the roof sagged. But it wasn't the rotting wood or the stench that made the place unbearable. It was him. My father's voice was louder than thunder and sharper than any blade we owned. When he was in one of his moods, which was most days, the sound of his boots on the floorboards could make my spine lock up like a kicked dog. I learned early to read the signs. How he held his mug. Whether his hand twitched. If his mouth was too still. That was the worst, the quiet. That meant the storm was building. He worked the mills before the accident. Lost a few fingers when a belt snapped and got caught in the gears. After that, he drank more than he breathed and talked like the world owed him something. When he couldn't get coin from the docks or steel from traders, he took it out on us. He didn't need much of a reason. Once I asked him if I could go with the neighbor girl to gather watercress by the creek. He broke a stool across my back. Another time he came home stinking of fish and fury, muttering about some man who'd looked at my mother wrong. He accused her of whoring. She didn't argue, she just stood there hollow-eyed as he dragged her by the hair across the room and slammed her into the wall. He didn't stop until she bled from the mouth. I was 11 when I started hiding knives. Not to use, not yet, but just to know I had something. Some nights he'd pace the floor, drunk and muttering, swinging the belt in slow circles. He wouldn't even look at us. Just muttered things like, ungrateful, parasites, could have had a better life. I knew better than to speak. Once I coughed at the wrong moment and he hit me so hard my vision blurred. My left ear still rings when the wind's strong. My mother was a ghost in that place. She wasn't always like that. I think there was a time she sang, before the bruises became normal, before her hands trembled when they tried to hold a spoon. But now. He just stared. At the wall. Nothing. She existed in the cracks, in the corners, never in the way, never making sound. I tried talking to her sometimes. "Ma," I'd whisper when he was gone. "We could leave." She'd look at me like I was an animal in a cage, something pitiful and doomed. Then she'd shake her head, almost like she didn't know she was doing it. I stopped asking. It was worse in winter. He didn't work. He barely left the hovel. The cold made him meaner, more restless. When the storms came, he took to shouting at the walls, accusing them of leaning in on him. One time he punched a hole straight through a plank and screamed for half the night, bleeding and howling about rotting wood and rotten women. And me. Always me. "You got that look," he'd say. "Same as your mother. Always staring like I'm the monster. You want to eat, you shut your mouth." I didn't cry in front of him anymore. I cried when the wind drowned it out. I cried when he passed out with the bottle in his hand and the fire burned low. And sometimes I cried without sound at all, just tears slipping from my eyes, salt against my dirt-crusted cheeks. There was nothing left of love in that place. Not even hate, really. Just fear and silence and the tight, aching desperation of wanting to claw through the walls and vanish into the trees. That night the storm outside howled. Rain hammered the roof like fists and the fire barely kept its breath. My father had passed out drunk again, snoring and muttering in his sleep, one hand still clutching the bottle. My mother sat hunched in the corner, picking at the same hole in her dress over and over like maybe, if she picked hard enough, the whole thing would unravel and take her with it. I looked around that room. The sagging walls. The broken stool. The dark smear on the wall from when my head hit it last week. My mother's cracked lips. My father's chest rising and falling like a bloated animal. Something in me snapped. Not loud. Not all at once. Just quietly, like a door shutting behind you forever. I moved slow. I'd already packed what little I had. A crust of stale bread. A water skin. A bit of cloth. The knife I'd stolen from under his bed while he slept one night, still flecked with rust and something darker. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. The door creaked when I opened it and I winced, but no one stirred. Not even the ghost of the girl I used to be. And then I ran. Barefoot into the storm. Mud and branches cutting my feet. Wind tearing at my ragged clothes. The woods howling. The dark swallowing everything. But the deeper I went, the more I could breathe. Because out there, out in the cold and the trees in the wild, at least I had a chance. A chance to be something more than the bruises he gave me. A chance to find someone who saw me. A chance to live. The storm swallowed me whole. Every breath felt like knives in my lungs, every step like glass beneath my feet. Rain soaked me down to the skin, and the trees whipped and groaned above like they might crack and fall at any moment. My thin shawl clung to me heavy and useless. The world had no mercy. No warmth. Just blackness and cold and mud that pulled at my legs like it wanted me buried. But it still beat being back there. By dawn I was shaking so bad I could barely hold my hands steady. My lips were split. My feet were raw. I'd found a fallen log to huddle behind, curling into myself like a half-dead thing and hoping the wind wouldn't find me. Every sound in the woods set my heart racing, snapping branches, rustling leaves, animal cries in the distance. But I stayed where I was, teeth chattering, eyes locked on the shifting shadows. The next day, maybe the day after, time was strange out there. I stumbled out of the forest and found a road. It was little more than a path carved by wagon wheels and hooves, but to me it looked like salvation. Roads led somewhere. Roads meant people, and even if they were dangerous, they weren't him. I followed it east. For days I walked. Sometimes people passed me, merchants in carts, traveling priests, farmers on donkeys. Most ignored me. A few looked too long, eyes crawling over me like fleas. I kept my head down. I didn't speak. When hunger hit, I chewed moss. When thirst clawed at my throat, I drank from ditches. And when I couldn't go any farther, I crawled under trees and tried to disappear into the roots. That's when I met her. I had collapsed at the base of a pine, the pain in my feet mixing with fever and starvation. I thought she was a dream at first, a shadow that moved too gracefully to be real. "You're bleeding," she said. I didn't answer. I didn't have words left. She knelt beside me. Black scarf over her mouth, curls spilling around her shoulders like fire. Her eyes were sharp, hard, but not unkind. She handed me a canteen. "Drink, mouse." I drank. Water never tasted like that before, cold, clean, and alive. She broke off half a hunk of bread and held it out. I stared at it. "I'm not a trap," she said. "If I wanted to rob you, I'd already have whatever's in that ratty bag." I took it. We didn't talk much at first. She walked ahead of me, checking the road, listening for trouble. I followed like a shadow. She didn't ask where I came from and I didn't tell her. But I watched her, the way she moved. The way she never let anyone get too close. The way she slept with her back to the tree and her knife in her hand. Eventually she told me her name. "Fira," she said, one night by a low fire in a hollow off the road. "You." I hesitated. "I'll just keep calling you Mouse if you want." I shrugged. "I don't remember my name." She raised an eyebrow. "Liar." I looked away. "I don't want to remember it." She didn't press. We traveled together after that. She taught me how to bind my feet with scraps of cloth torn from abandoned laundry lines. How to tell which mushrooms wouldn't kill you. How to spot the glint of metal from a hidden blade in the underbrush. "You've got good instincts," she said once. "You listen. You wait. That's more than most." I started smiling again, just little ones. When she told a dumb story. When she called me Mouse like it was a badge of honor. When we found shelter in an old barn during a thunderstorm and listened to the rain like it was music. She was the first person in my life who never looked at me like a burden. We found the bandits by accident. Or maybe they found us. They came out of the trees in the late dusk, a dozen of them, lean and rough, weapons drawn but not raised. Fira stepped in front of me without hesitation, hand on her dagger. "We don't want trouble," she said. A man with a broken nose and a deep scar across his throat looked us over. "Don't care what you want. You're on our land." "Didn't see a sign." He grinned. "Then you're either blind or stupid." Another stepped forward. This one was tall, gaunt, with dead eyes and a sword that looked older than he was. "Who's the pup?" he asked, nodding toward me. "She's quick," Fira said. "Knows how to stay quiet. You could use someone like her." The leader looked at me. "Got a name?" "No," I said. He smirked. "Smart. That's how we joined. Not with a test. Not with a fight. Just a shared understanding. We were hungry and they were hungry, and sometimes it was better to bleed for people who'd at least admit they were thieves than to live around those who claimed virtue while hiding knives behind their backs. Their camp was deep in an old quarry, overgrown and forgotten by the crown. The walls were steep, the paths hidden, and the watchmen didn't sleep easy. They called themselves the Dust Dogs. There were about 20 of them, give or take, orphans, deserters, ex-slaves, 2 women who used to be soldiers, and 1 boy no older than me who'd already killed more men than he could count. No one cared who you were before. Only what you could do now. They gave me an old cloak, too big and too worn, and a blade with a chipped tip. Fire stayed close, teaching me, watching my back. They called me Mouse and meant it as praise. We raided slow and quiet. Hit caravans when the sky was black and the guards were drunk. Took food, medicine, boots, a few coins. Mern, the tall one with dead eyes, said to never get greedy. Greed brings attention, he said. And attention brings soldiers. Fire and I slept near the edge of camp, always near the shadows. We shared fire, shared rations, shared the silence. One night as we lay under a tarp in the rain, she said, "You ever think about the sea?" The sea. Yeah. Big, blue, endless. I think I'd like to see it. I heard it swallows people. She laughed. So does the world. We stayed with the bandits for nearly half a season. Long enough for the cold to come and the trees to strip bare. I got faster. Meaner that I stopped flinching when I heard raised voices. I stopped shaking when someone looked angry. I was becoming someone else. And I liked it. But Fire started talking about the city. The capital, she said one night after a raid. We could vanish there. Take our coin and go legit. Maybe find work in a tavern or forge. Start over. Think they'll just forget we're thieves? They don't know our names. He was right. The bandits didn't own us. The past didn't chain us. And we were getting too comfortable. That was dangerous. So we left. No goodbyes. No explanations. Just 2 packs, one direction, and the sound of boots crunching frostbitten leaves. The capital rose in the distance like a wound in the land, all black stone, gray towers and smoke. It stank worse than the hovel I'd fled, but it buzzed with life. Thousands of people. Merchants shouting. Guards patrolling. Children laughing and crying in the same breath. Fire kept me close as we moved through the crowd. I felt small again. Exposed. But she was there. We found work in a tavern near the lower quarter. Fire cooked that I scrubbed floors, cleared mugs, kept my head down. The pay was nothing. But it came with food, a shared loft, and 4 walls that didn't threaten to cave in on us. It was the first time I felt something like hope. That was before I met Rennick. Before his smile turned to teeth. Before the warmth we'd built began to rot beneath the surface. And before the storm hit, not just outside but inside, the kind of storm that takes more than your friend, more than your home, more than your peace. The kind that leaves you running again. Alone. Rennick came in quiet. He wasn't the loud, leering sort you expect trouble from. No. He smiled too easily. Wore a clean uniform. Walked like the city belonged to him and looked at people like they were already his. The first time I saw him, he was leaning on the tavern's counter, sipping spiced wine, eyes drifting lazily over the crowd. They settled on me like oil slicking water. "You're new," he said. I didn't answer. Fira stepped between us. "She works." Rennick grinned. "So do I." He started coming more often. Once a week. Then twice. Then every other night. Always a cup of wine. Always seated where he could watch me. At first it was just looks. Then came the compliments. "You've got pretty hands for a cleaner. Bet you'd look good in blue. Smile more. You've got the face for it." The other workers said he was harmless. "A guard's favor is worth something in this city," one girl whispered. "You could do worse." But Fira saw it. "He's playing long," she said one night as we curled under our blanket in the loft. "Waiting for you to let your guard down. I'm not afraid of him. You should be." After that, I made sure to stay near crowds. Kept my knife tucked in the band of my apron. Fira started walking me to and from the tavern every shift. We watched each other's backs like always. Then one night I found a gift on my pillow. A thin bracelet, bronze with green glass stones. Not expensive but not cheap. It had a clasp shaped like a lion's mouth. I froze. No one had been in our room. The window was still locked. The door had made no sound. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I threw it in the fire and watched the glass melt, popping and hissing as it died. Fire was furious. "He was here," she said. "In our space." I nodded. "We should leave." "Where would we go?" She didn't answer. We stayed. The next few days were tense. I didn't see Rennick, but I felt him like a presence pressed against the windows. Like a weight in the corner of every room. My chest stayed tight. My sleep came shallow. Then came the rain. The storm arrived without warning, blowing in from the western hills, wind slamming against the tavern shutters like fists. Fire went out early to fetch meat for the kitchen, cloak pulled tight, hair tied back, muttering about bad timing and soaked boots. She kissed my cheek before leaving. "Stay inside, Mouse." "I always do." I didn't know it would be the last time. The tavern emptied early. Customers fled the rising wind. I cleaned quickly, eager to be back in our loft. By twilight, the city streets were drowned in water, the sky black with fury. I locked the front door, bolted the back. Then I heard the stairs. Slow, heavy, not Fira's. I froze. He didn't knock, he just opened the door. Rinnik stepped in like he belonged, rain soaking his uniform, dark hair plastered to his face. His eyes gleamed in the lamplight. His smile had rotted. "You've been avoiding me." I backed toward the wall. "Get out." I asked around, he said, voice low and flat. "Nobody knows your real name. Nobody's seen your papers. You think the law forgets girls like you." I said, "Get out." He took another step. "I've been patient. Thought you were just shy. But you've been teasing. Leading me on." "No." He lunged. I grabbed for the knife beneath my pillow, but his hand caught my wrist and twisted. Pain flared white hot. I kicked, scratched, screamed, but he shoved me back, his weight pressing down like a cage of flesh and iron. "Stop struggling," he hissed. "It'll be easier." And then the door exploded inward. Fire. Soaked to the bone. Eyes blazing. Knife in hand. She didn't speak. He didn't need to. He moved. The blade flashed. Blood sprayed. Rinnik howled and staggered back, clutching his side. But he was stronger. Taller. Trained. He roared and tackled her into the wall. I heard the crack of bone. Her head. She fell. Hard. So. "No," I screamed, grabbing the fallen knife, lunging. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think. I carved. Rinnik turned, eyes wide, and I plunged the blade into his throat. He gurgled, staggered, reached for me. I tore the knife out and stabbed again. And again. And again. By the time he stopped moving, the room looked like a butcher's stall. Blood on the floor. The walls. My hands. My face. I dropped the knife. Then I crawled to her. Fira lay there, breath barely rising. Blood trickled from her temple. I held her hand. Rocked her. Whispered her name over and over. She opened her eyes once. And smiled. "Mouse," she rasped. Then nothing. I stayed until the storm moved on. Until the blood dried. Until her skin turned cold and the world felt hollow. I couldn't bury her. Not properly. So I took her scarf. Wrapped it around my wrist. Took her dagger too. And I ran. Out the back. Through the alleys. Into the black. I didn't stop running. Not when the city gates faded behind me. Not when the wind cut through me like knives. Not when the pain in my chest bloomed into something worse than grief, something like guilt. Because I'd stayed. Because I hadn't listened. Because she was dead and I was alive. And now I was alone again. A girl with a stolen name. With blood on her hands. And nowhere left to go but forward. The scarf still smelled like her. Smoke and cedar and a hint of grease from the tavern kitchens. I kept it tied around my wrist even when the rain came, even when the wind turned cold and sharp. I didn't wash it. Couldn't. Like water would erase the last piece of her I had left. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew it had to be far. Every city gate, every guardhouse, every crossroads was another mouth that could whisper my name. Another lantern that could shine on the blood behind me. So I took the forgotten paths, the ones that led through crumbling ruins and dried-out riverbeds. Overgrown trails where only wild dogs and broken souls dared to travel. I became one of them. A shadow. A girl with no name. The further I went, the less I spoke. The less I could speak. My voice started to feel like something fragile I didn't deserve to use. But I survived. I stole what I needed. Traded a silver ring I'd hidden for a good pair of boots. Slept in stables, abandoned mills, even a grave once. Curled in the hollow beside a headstone because the wind couldn't reach me there. I ate roots, dried fish, once a rabbit that I cried over even as I skinned it. I didn't cry for Fira. Not yet. That came later. I crossed through hill towns and half-burned villages where no one asked questions if you kept your eyes down and your feet moving. I heard whispers about the war to the north. Famine to the west. Raids on the merchant roads. But none of it mattered. I wasn't running from a war. I was running from memory. One night as I slept in a ruin near the coast, what had once been a temple, its roof collapsed and vines choking its walls, I dreamt of her. Fira standing in the doorway, dry despite the storm around her. She didn't speak, just looked at me. And smiled. When I woke I screamed. I screamed until my throat tore raw, until birds scattered from the trees, until the wind itself seemed to pause. Then I buried my face in the dirt and cried for the first time since the capital. I don't know how long I stayed there. Long enough for moss to grow over the stone I carved her name into. Fire, just that. No date. No message. She didn't need one. She already lived in the part of me that wouldn't break. After that I changed again. Not back to the girl from the hovel. Not the one who ran barefoot into a storm. Someone else. Someone sharper. Quieter. More careful but not afraid. I began speaking again. To travelers. To old women at roadside inns. To children who tossed pebbles into streams and told me where the wild berries grew. They called me Mouse sometimes. I let them. Other times I lied, gave myself new names. Hoka. Ri. Sara. Once even Fira. That one hurt but I kept it. Each name was armor. Each lie a step forward. I helped where I could. Pulled a merchant's son from under a wagon after a mudslide. Guarded a sick girl while her mother rode for medicine. Fixed fences. Patched roofs. Slept in haylofts and under stars. And every time I thought I might stay somewhere I remembered her, the way she moved, the way she bled, the way her body hit the floor. So I kept going. One day I reached the edge of a cliff high above a gray sea. The wind howled like a chorus of ghosts. Salt clung to my lips. Below, waves crashed against black rocks. I stood there for a long time. Hands at my sides. Scarf on my wrist. And I spoke. Not loud. Not angry. Just enough for the wind to carry it away. I'm still here. That was enough. Not revenge. Not peace. But something in between. I turned inland and walked toward whatever came next. Because I had survived. Because I still had her dagger. Because somewhere out there in the tangle of forest and sky and dirt roads, there were people worth finding. And because one day, maybe far from now, maybe not, someone would need someone like me. And I'd be ready.